You know that feeling right before a holiday? That buzz in the air. The lights, the music, the forced cheer in every store. For most of my life, Christmas was my absolute favorite time of year. The smell of my mom's pine-scented candles, the stupid, tattered elf on the mantle we've had since I was 5. My dad pretending to grumble about putting up the lights while secretly loving every second of it. But this year the buzz just felt like static. A constant low-level hum of anxiety. Because this was the first Christmas since I'd been back. Back from my last tour. Back to a country that felt different. Back to a family that felt like it had moved on without me. I'm Chloe. I spent 8 years in the Army. I was a sergeant. I led convoys, managed logistics under pressure, and learned how to fix a broken engine with little more than duct tape and a prayer. I thought I was prepared for anything, but nothing prepared me for coming home to silence. I was living in a small apartment about an hour away from my parents, trying to figure out civilian life. The plan was to drive home on Christmas Eve like always. I'd even bought the gifts. A new tool set for my dad, Gerald. A beautiful silk scarf for my mom, Diane. A ridiculously expensive video game for my younger brother, Jordan. I was trying so hard to slip back into a skin that didn't feel like it fit anymore. Then the text came. It was a Wednesday. December 23rd, I was just finishing a shift at the auto shop where I'd managed to get a job. My phone buzzed. It was my dad. My heart did a little leap. Maybe he was confirming what time I should come over. Maybe he needed me to pick up eggnog. I opened the message, and the world just stopped. It wasn't a long text, but every word was a bullet. Chloe, after discussing it with your mother and Jordan, we think it's best if you don't come home for Christmas this year. To be honest, your demeanor since you've been back has been very difficult for everyone. You're distant. You're angry. Jordan's girlfriend is nervous around you, and we just want a peaceful holiday. We need some space. Maybe we can try again next year. I read it once, twice, a dozen times. I stood there in the grimy parking lot, my hands covered in grease. And I felt the foundations of my entire life crumble beneath my feet. Your demeanor. Was that what they called the PTSD nightmares I never told them about? The hypervigilance that made me jump at loud noises. Difficult for everyone. Not, are you okay? Not, how can we help? Jordan's girlfriend is nervous around you. That one just broke me. I'd met her once. She'd asked me what it was like to carry a gun, and I'd given her a short, honest answer. I hadn't sugarcoated it. I guess that made me a monster. We need some space after 8 years of service. After missing countless birthdays and holidays. After coming home with invisible wounds, I was too proud and too scared to show them. They needed space. The rage came first. A hot, blinding fury that made me want to put my fist through a wall. Then came the grief. A wave of sadness so profound I had to lean against my truck to keep from falling over. I was their daughter, their sister, and I'd been disinvited from my own home for Christmas because I wasn't peaceful enough. I drove back to my empty apartment in a daze. I didn't cry. I stared at the wrapped presents sitting by my door, and they looked like artifacts from someone else's life. I felt a million miles away from everything. And then something in me just snapped. The soldier in me took over. The part of me that knew how to survive when a mission went sideways. When intel was wrong, when you had to adapt and overcome. Okay, Chloe, I thought, you've been given an order. Stand down, retreat. But I was done taking orders from people who didn't have my back. I started thinking about the house. My house, the one I'd grown up in. The one my parents had almost lost when my dad got laid off a decade ago. I remembered the panic, the late-night whispers. I remembered sitting at the kitchen table, my first re-enlistment bonus check in my hand. I was 22 years old. I'd signed it over to them, no questions asked. It was enough to pay off the second mortgage and get them back on their feet. It's just a loan, sweetie, my mom had said, crying with relief. We'll put your name on the deed as a cosigner until we pay you back, my dad had promised. Clapping me on the shoulder, it's just a formality. A formality. One they'd conveniently forgotten about. They never paid me back. And I never asked. They were my family. It didn't matter. But now it mattered. I spent that night tearing my apartment apart. I was a woman possessed. I finally found it buried in a box of my old military paperwork. A thick, legal-sized envelope from a title company. Inside was the paperwork, deed, and there it was, clear as day. My name, Chloe Marie Evans, right next to my father's. Gerald Robert Evans. We were joint tenants with rights of survivorship. I wasn't just a co-signer. I was a co-owner. A 50% owner of the property they had just banned me from. The next morning, I didn't call a friend. I didn't cry. I called a lawyer. A sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Flores. I laid it all out for her. The text message. The deed. She listened without a hint of judgment. "What do you want to do, Chloe?" she asked calmly. I took a deep breath. The answer came to me as clearly as if it had been waiting there all along. "I want my house back," I said, "and I want them out." The legal process was cold and efficient. A notice of ownership. A formal demand to vacate. My parents were served 2 days after Christmas. The phone calls started immediately. First, my mom, hysterical. "Chloe, baby, what is this? This is a misunderstanding. Please, we're family." Then my brother, Jordan, furious. "You're tearing this family apart. How could you be so selfish?" Finally, my dad. His voice was cold, colder than I'd ever heard it. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you thank us. You're using a technicality to make us homeless." "No, Dad," I said, my voice steady, though my hand was shaking. "You made me homeless first. You just did it with a text message. They fought it, of course. But the law was on my side. Ms. Flores was a pit bull. They had 30 days to vacate. I didn't go to the house during that time. I couldn't. I heard through the grapevine that my dad was telling everyone who would listen that his veteran daughter had lost her mind and was kicking them out onto the street the day they moved out. I drove over. I sat in my truck across the street and watched the moving van pull away. I saw my dad's face etched with a bitterness I knew would never fade. I saw my brother refuse to even look in my direction. My mom was crying. A part of me died in that moment. The little girl who believed in Christmas miracles. She was gone for good. But when I walked inside, the silence was different. It wasn't the silence of rejection. It was the silence of possibility. The house was empty. It echoed. It was just a shell. But it was my shell, and that's when the real idea was born. I didn't want to live here, surrounded by the ghosts of a family that didn't want me. This house was supposed to be a home, so I would make it one, a real one. I reached out to an organization that helped female veterans. I told them my story. I told them about the house. I had a new mission. I used my savings, took out a loan against the property, and got to work. We painted. We repaired. We turned my old bedroom into a serene sanctuary. Jordan's old room became a shared space for two. The living room where we'd once opened presents became a common area with comfy couches and a bookshelf filled with resources. We called it the Anchor, a place for women like me who'd served and come home to find that home wasn't what they remembered. A place to find their footing without judgment. It's been a year now. The house is full again, full of laughter, of late-night talks, of the sound of women helping each other heal. We have a rule. No one is alone on Christmas. I still think about my family sometimes. I heard my parents moved into a small apartment. Jordan barely speaks to them. The irony is, I think I gave them what they said they wanted. A peaceful holiday. They just didn't know the cost. But this house is finally what it was always meant to be. A shelter, a safe harbor. It's not filled with the memory of a family that fell apart. It's filled with the hope of a new one we're building every single day. They told me not to come home for Christmas. So I built a new one. And this time it's a home where everyone is welcome. Especially the ones who've been told they don't belong. Welcome. Especially the ones who've been told they don't belong.